I'm Kat Zager. I am your MS4 coordinator with CBU. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about our residential stormwater grants for the 2022 year. If you want to ask questions in between slides or if something comes to you, go for it. Otherwise, we can have questions at the end. All right, next slide. All right, so I already introduced myself, so we checked that off the agenda. And then we'll kind of talk about the history of our stormwater grants and what that's looking like for next year. Talk about stormwater, some residential stormwater practices you might want to consider when you're preparing your grant application. And then we'll have some questions. Next slide. All right, so I'm your MS4 coordinator, like I said. Other people in our stormwater staff are Christy Lindberg, our stormwater education specialist. She's actually the one who's usually doing this talk, but she is out sick right now. And then we have Sam Arthur and Brent Solbrig, and they do a lot of the boots on the ground work for us. Next. All right, so deadlines. The big information here is that your grants are due, hello. Your grants are due Tuesday, February 1st of 2022 by 5 p.m. That will be the cutoff for grant applications. Next slide. And then you will submit your applications on the utility stormwater website, which if you go to the next slide, we'll look at what that looks like. So on the stormwater website, there's a numerical list of steps when you're considering the grant process. And number 5 is the application. So when you get to here, you just click on the link there for application, and then that will take you to our grant application, which is on the next slide. And so once you've reached this application here, this is a form you'll fill out online. That's your application. And so once you've reached this, you know you're in the right place. Next. And so the residential stormwater grants are generally meant to address stormwater issues that are on your property, but can also be beneficial to properties around you or your neighborhood. And they're usually in the form of small grants. We try to give out several small grants to homeowners. And this year, we will be awarding a total of $100,000 in 2022. Next slide. So a little history. This grant program started in 2019 as kind of an experiment with, that kind of went along with the rate increase with stormwater fees. So in 2019, we had $35,000 kind of as a pilot, and we ended up getting 26 applications that totaled $167,000. So we definitely had buy-in from the community. There were 11 projects that were awarded that year. There were 4 rain gardens, 4 driveway culverts, a dry creek bed, a ditch stabilization and rain garden project, and a drainage improvement project. At the time, those projects ranged from anywhere between $500 and $5,000. Next. And then in 2020, we doubled that amount to $70,000, and we ended up getting 50 applicants, and it totaled well more than $70,000. So we ended up being able to award 16 projects. 8 of those were located in the census blocks with the lowest median neighborhood incomes, and the total for those projects was $36,883. Of all those projects, we did 5 rain gardens, 8 dry creek beds, a ditch stabilization rain garden, and 2 drainage improvement projects. For those projects, they ranged anywhere between $2,000 and $8,000, with the average being around $5,000. Okay. We had the same amount again in 2021. We had 34 applications, but it totaled even more than the 50 we had the year before. We ended up being able to award 12 projects, with 4 of them being located in low-income neighborhoods. Those projects were bioswales, dry creek beds, rain gardens. We did one that was pond maintenance, and then helped with a driveway culvert. Those projects in 2021 went from about 2,000 to 14,000, with the average being about 6,000. Yeah?
So in the last 2 years, you haven't awarded all the available money?
Oh, no, we awarded all the available money. The 23 is how much we're awarded to low-income projects in low-income neighborhoods. Sorry. Yeah. All right. All right, and so in order to be eligible for this grant, the applicant needs to have a single-family residential property. Applicants must be paying the City of Bloomington stormwater fee, and if you live in the City of Bloomington, you probably do. The applicant must be the owner of their property, and then if you are putting in an application with your neighbors, which we do encourage you to work with your neighbors and maybe have a project that spans a few houses, we ask that those houses be contiguous. All right, so a very general rundown of what the application process looks like. First, you want to kind of get in contact with us. You can get in contact with Christy, our education specialist. She's really running the show with the residential stormwater grants. You can also email us at stormwater@bloomington.in.gov. We have guidelines on the website that will really help you look at the nitty-gritty details of the process. And then when you're doing that, you're probably going to, well, we'll have a site visit with you first. And we'll kind of look at your property and help you think about maybe what you would want to do, answer any questions you might have at that time. And then moving forward, you want to choose a contractor. We say that, maybe pick between 3, try to find at least 3 contractors so you can compare. But if that's not possible, just get what you can. And then when you go to fill out the application, you'll have your information, the project information, a description of the existing conditions of the project site, and then a description of the proposed project. Okay. So when you are choosing a contractor, like I said, it's good to try to pick at least 3, or at least have 3 to choose between. And some of the things you want to think about when you're choosing a contractor is asking them if they are licensed and bonded. Are they insured for their work? Do they have a history of drainage experience? And are they comfortable giving you examples of their previous work or references of their previous work? Okay. Okay, and then part of the application instructions is that you will be asked to make some attachments on that form. The first one is a location map. It is just a general map of the location of your intended project. Some photographs of the site as it is. So a lot of people like to take them either while it's raining or after a rain to really show the drainage. We ask that you don't attach any videos because they can become cumbersome in our database. And then the other thing you want to add is a plan view sketch. Often this is something that you're going to want to ask your contractor to provide if they are helping you with your plan. And then you want to provide the cost estimate for the project, which is also often provided by your contractor. Okay? Okay, so once we get all the applications in, it's going to go through a pretty rigorous review process. It will start with an internal staff review, and that is the folks at CBU and with the city. We're going to look at the location, the drainage area, and the impact that this project is going to have. We're going to look at things like, its potential to reduce flooding and to improve water quality. We're going to look at its proximity to waterways or other stormwater infrastructure and how it's going to synergize with that. And then once the internal review committee kind of gives their opinion of each project, then that's going to go to an external review committee where they're going to take that into consideration when they look at things like the application materials, like just the general quality of the application. The median neighborhood income level is also a component that is considered. The number of people in areas served, which, like I said, sometimes projects can really have bigger impacts than just your property, even though it may be located on your property. Also, project feasibility. How is it going to work? Does it seem like it might work? You know, there's often at least one engineer in either the internal or the external review committee. And then, you know, again, looking at the potential benefits in relation to stormwater. Okay. So once projects are awarded, you will be notified, and then you'll go and we'll write up a grant agreement, and it will have the total. It'll have a lot more like technical, legal details, and then we'll sign a grant agreement together. And then you'll go and do your project with your contractor. And then once the project's done, we'll come and inspect it just to be like, hey, did they do what they said they were gonna do? Did it look like the plan? And then afterwards, the payment will be made either, there's a couple of different ways that it can be done, either directly to the contractor or through the resident to the contractor. And then we like to see, and I don't know if this is necessarily a stipulation, but we like to see some kind of maintenance plan, some plan to maintain the infrastructure. Okay. So we did a lot of talk about like solving drainage in your home. So just to do a little bit of a like background on like what is stormwater in the first place. So stormwater is what happens when it rains and all of that rainwater is running off from impervious surfaces. It can also be a combination of rainwater and snowmelt. And this is what, you know, can cause things like flooding or erosion, or like you can see, like pretty serious flooding. Okay. So with our changing climate, there have been, at least in this area, more frequent and intense rainfall events. And these are punctuated by longer periods of drought, which doesn't really help for things like erosion and preventing flash flooding. So this is just a picture from earlier this summer as an example. Okay. So, and here's a quote from the mayor, just kind of encouraging folks to work with the city and the city to work with private residents through this grant program. The mayor's a big fan, so we're excited about that. Okay. All right, and we have the opportunity to make a difference, both through the city and through private homeowners. Okay. And so I just wanted to remark, and there are some pamphlets over there for both this program and the Adopt a Drain program. We are doing some other things to help our stormwater in the community. One of them is a drain marking program that tells people like, hey, this goes to the stream. And then we have our Adopt a Drain program where residents can adopt a drain and help clear it out because, you know, you can only get to so many drains. And then, of course, we have our residential stormwater grants. And then we are working on a stormwater education series with a series of videos. Our first one is out on YouTube. You can check us out. All right. Okay, and so finally, we can talk about some stormwater practices that you might want to consider when you're thinking about trying to make up a drainage plan or applying for the residential stormwater grants. Okay. So first, there's rain gardens. Rain gardens tend to be a bit smaller, and they're just a depression where stormwater can filter through the soil and infiltrate into the soil instead of running off. Usually that's aided by lots of native plants with hardier roots that help suck that water into the earth. Okay? And then another one is a bioswale. And so this Similar to a rain garden, this helps with infiltration, but this also helps direct your stormwater. So a bioswale can be used to help direct your stormwater away from like potentially your house or where you don't want it to be pooling. You can help direct it down away from a place you don't want it to be. But what's nice about a bioswale is it's really good for pollutant removal because it's got both the filters of the plants above ground, which trap sediment and trap pollutants, but also below ground, you've got that infiltration and filtration. Okay? And then a dry creek bed has the same quality as a bioswale in that it is going to help move water away from where you don't want it to be. It helps carry water during rain events. But it's not really meant for filtering or infiltrating water. It just kind of moves it somewhere else. Yeah. All right, and then we have bioretention ponds. I like to think of these as bigger, fancier rain gardens. So I think some people might be familiar with traditional retention ponds or detention ponds. A bioretention pond can pool water for a time, but it's going to have things like engineered soils. Sometimes it has an underdrain, sometimes they don't, and they really help to improve water quality by filtering all of that runoff through the vegetation. Okay? And then we do have traditional retention and detention ponds. This helps to capture runoff and helps prevent downstream flooding, and depending on the design, may help to improve water quality. Okay. All right, and another thing that we can help people out with is driveway culverts. This can get a little tricky because we can't actually pay for the driveway replacement, so you really have to work with the city. If you're gonna replace your driveway, we could help with the culvert potentially. But yeah, it also requires a pre-construction meeting with some engineers at CBU just to look at feasibility and things like that. Okay? All right, so again, submit your applications on our website. It's at the Stormwater Grants website under the Utilities website. Okay? And if you have any questions, you can contact me or Christy Lindberg at stormwater@bloomington.in.gov. From there, she can set you up with a site visit and get the ball rolling. And that's that. Any questions? Yeah.
Do you do the site visit prior to doing the application, or do you do an application and then have a site visit?
I would do the site visit before the application.
Okay.
So it just helps with like getting like maybe some questions answered or a little background information. We can kind of help you think about what you want to do and direct you towards, and especially if you didn't come to this, you know, having a little more information. So.
And the driveway culverts, because I know that's something we need. So you would maybe help pay for the culvert part, but not the driveway part. So
Yeah.
if we were doing an application, it's probably best to break it down into costs. This is this, and this is this.
Right.
And do you ever award like partial money towards, like if it's $10,000, let's say I'll give you $2,000 or anything like that?
You know, I think I might have glazed over that in the presentation.
I was late too.
Oh, it's okay. So yeah, we try to fully fund all of the projects, but yes, we do sometimes partially fund projects, especially in certain circumstances like that, or if the project is like pretty pricey, we can offer to pay a partial payment on it, and then, you know, if that isn't accepted, then, you know, we move on. But anything else? Yeah? Any resources to help find contractors? We are right now working on a contractor's fact sheet, like a facts and question sheet, so that contractors kind of know what to expect. We can't specifically recommend contractors as the city. I think there's a conflict there, but Okay, okay. Yeah, that's been a stumbling block, and I think, we're hoping to maybe talk, like, as the city, talk to contractors and kind of ask them what would make it easier for them. I know now with the grant applications we did have, we're, getting the quotes from the contractor first so that the grant can be based off of that versus partial payments and having issues with that. So, yeah, when you do a site visit, we can't recommend anyone specifically, but, you can maybe reach out to other folks who've gotten the grant. I know that on our website we have some testimonials, so that might be something.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So, and I similarly have the same issue, but I found somebody and they have done some before, and so, but they're unable to get a lot of specifics back to me until very close to the grant application time, and I was hoping to have, more input. Like, it could be that everything goes really smoothly, but I guess my question is, wondering, like, if there's ever any changes allowed if something is submitted, and is that like, at that point, is that it, or if there's, so that's one question. Another one is if there's partial funding and then the project is scaled back in a different way, or is it just a commitment to do that project that was submitted?
So,
Two more questions on that.
yeah, things always come up, and we're always willing to work with, especially if someone's been awarded a grant and, something comes up, they plan to dig in an area and they find that there's a bunch of, rock or something. I'm just giving up a completely fictitious example, but something unforeseeable happens, and so they have to change the plan. And I know that we've worked with people in the past when things do have to change, and that have to be scaled in a different way. Just keeping an open line of communication is really important, and just saying like, hey, this came up, we need to change this, and talking with us. And I think that's really, we can, to an extent, be flexible.
Right, no,
Yeah,
right, I don't
yeah.
But I just wonder, and again, I was really late, so I super apologize, but,
You're okay.
what level of detail is mine for things like planting? Like, do you have to say like, 5 9-bark bushes, and if you can't find those, and then you have to get permission to switch to something else, or like, how does?
I see, yeah, okay. So when it comes to planting, it is great to have a very specific set, have a design, but I understand that sometimes what you planned isn't in stock, or isn't, and those are one of those unforeseeable situations where, like, you might have to replace your 9-barks with some dogwoods, or, replace it with something else, or change the design a little bit. And I think those are the kinds of things we,
That's just expected, that's kind of
yeah,
things happen.
yeah, yeah.
And then my project, in part, it's very close to what would be the property line.
Mhm.
And so, when I was speaking with the contractor, I was saying, my neighbors are moving, and I'm pretty sure they don't want to put their house on the market saying, like, oh, there's a stormwater. So, what I was thinking, instead of having, so I don't know, like, if we planted native plants there, like mint or something, that are just gonna spread, so I don't know if that's okay with them, but I don't think they want to be involved, because they don't know whether they'll be living there or not.
Mm.
If the grant would be awarded, so I don't know how to address something like that.
Well, I will say if the plan is to have this, like, the structure or the project across 2 properties,
It could be done that way, or it could be done in a different way.
right. So my safe bet for that situation specifically would just be to keep it on your property. And then, you know, I don't think not having the approval of surrounding neighbors if your project is on your property is going to be like a consideration,
And
you
if
know.
it was something that they were okay with, like planting, but they wouldn't want something like a dried creek bed,
Mm-hmm.
is it okay to, like, when you're applying, how do you put in for more than one or just show that they have permission, or, I'm kind of confused about that, because the grant on the website looks like it's just like one person filling out the grant.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you do share with neighbors, we do ask that one person kind of takes the point on it, and then kind of takes the lead. But there should be a section where you can list the other neighbors that are working with you on this grant. We just like to have one point of contact for clarity purposes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So our property's next to an apartment complex,
Uh-huh.
and we really think the apartment complex needs to fix, they're the problem, for that side of the house. So what's the difference between applying for, or applying to bandage it and make it at least better on our side versus actually getting them to fix it properly?
Well, so this residential stormwater grants is definitely intended to do whatever fixes you can do on the property that you own. You know, when it comes to, you know, having neighbors where you think maybe they're responsible for the drainage or something, like, that really becomes more of a, like, I think like more of a civil situation. And like just reaching out to them and going, yeah, I don't know if the residential stormwater grants can necessarily, would be the program for that. Anything else?
When do you find out when they're awarded?
So I don't think we have a firm date on that yet. And I apologize because I actually started in September of this year. So I think it's around late March, early April, if I remember. I think the reason why the deadline has been pushed to February 1st is so that the grant recipients can be notified in time for spring planting season.
And February 1st is the deadline, right? I think it was February.
Yes, yes, yes. I think that's what it said. I think that's what it said. Anybody else?
Would you mention like what the range of awards that you have done?
Yeah.
The contractor will just say like, it'll be about this, you know, and I'm just like, I don't.
So, you know, each year the range and the average has increased because, you know, I think it's been a learning process for us as well. So to have an idea of how much projects like this truly cost, especially contracting them and not just like DIYing it in your backyard. So in 2019, when we started it and only had that $35,000, they were like from $500 to what, I think it said $2,000 or $5,000 at most. And now, you know, in 2021, the average cost was $6,000, and some of them even got into the double digits. So it really, you know, depends. And there will be a copy of this on our website. So,
I have a question.
yeah.
When you're awarding grants, there are many years that, you know, you've awarded maybe half the amount of people that apply.
Uh-huh.
If people reapply, do they get like priority? I mean, how do you decide who gets it and who doesn't?
So, having not been on a committee yet, reapplying, you know, I think if you apply and you don't get it, I would definitely encourage to reapply because you don't really know what the other applications are going to be like in any given year. And also, like, if you apply once and maybe you didn't have enough time that year to really like scope out enough contractors, or like now you have a better idea of what you could do and make your application even better, that I think would increase your chances, because you know you've been able to think about it longer than maybe the year before, or just having heard of it, you know. Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. Okay. If there are no other questions, thank you all so much for coming out. If you missed it, there's a sign-in sheet on the table. We've got brochures for both this program and our Adopt a Drain program. And I'm happy to answer any other questions outside of the mic if you need. All right, thank you very much.